The billing alert that appeared on my screen at 11:47 p.m. should never have existed. I'm Bryce Hamilton, 42, Legal Operations Director at one of Detroit's largest corporate law practices. 20 years in this business taught me to trust patterns. Numbers don't lie, people do. The alert flagged a $47,000 retainer payment from Meridian Industries, a client I'd been pursuing for 8 months. According to our case management system, they'd retained us 3 weeks ago. The problem was simple. I'd never closed that deal. I pulled the client file. Every document looked perfect. Engagement letter signed. Retainer deposited. Matter opened under case number 2024, Michigan 1847. The digital timestamps showed I'd handled the intake myself on October 15th at 2:33 p.m. I was in depositions in Grand Rapids that entire day. My access card logs confirmed it. Security footage would too if anyone bothered to check. But the system showed my user credentials processing Meridian's paperwork while I sat in a conference room 200 miles away. I scrolled through the engagement letter. My electronic signature appeared at the bottom, perfectly rendered. The client's signature looked authentic too. Even the retainer check had cleared through our trust account without triggering any compliance flags. Someone had built a flawless paper trail using my identity. I checked the matter assignment. The case was allocated to Percival Whitmore, our security clearance consultant. He joined the firm 18 months ago with stellar references from a Washington practice. Former military. Impeccable background. The partners loved him. Percival specialized in helping corporate clients navigate federal security clearance requirements. Boring work. Steady billable hours. He kept to himself, arrived early, stayed late. Model employee. I pulled his recent case assignments. 17 active matters, all legitimate clients I recognized. All properly documented. Nothing unusual except this Meridian file that shouldn't exist. The retainer deposit bothered me most. Our trust account procedures required dual authorization for any payment over $25,000. The system showed my approval and managing partner Millicent Ashford's, but I'd never seen this transaction. I called our bank's 24-hour service line. The automated system confirmed the deposit. October 15th. $47,000 from Meridian Industries, LLC. Account number matched our records perfectly. Meridian Industries existed. Delaware Incorporation. Active status. But when I searched our client development database, every interaction showed the same pattern. Initial interest, preliminary discussions, then radio silence. They'd never committed to retention. Until now, apparently. I printed the entire file, 43 pages of perfect documentation for a client relationship that never happened. Someone had invested serious time creating this fiction. The question was why. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Stop digging or you'll find more than you want. The office felt different suddenly. Too quiet. Too empty. I'd worked late, countless times, but tonight, the familiar space seemed hostile. Every shadow could hide someone watching. I locked the printed files in my desk drawer and logged out of the system. The parking garage elevator seemed slower than usual. My footsteps echoed too loudly on the concrete. Driving home, I kept checking my mirrors. No one followed, but the paranoia lingered. Someone had accessed our most secure systems using my credentials. Someone who knew our procedures well enough to forge a perfect client file. Someone inside the firm. The next morning would bring answers. I'd start with Percival Whitmore and work backward through every transaction. But as I pulled into my driveway, one thought dominated my mind. If they could steal my identity once, what else had they taken? The next morning arrived gray and cold, typical Detroit October weather that matched my mood perfectly. I'd barely slept, running scenarios through my head about who could have accessed our systems with such precision. Percival Whitmore had joined our firm 18 months ago as our security clearance consultant. The partnership needed someone to handle the increasing volume of government contract work, and Percival came with sterling credentials from Washington, D.C. His background check had been flawless. Former DoD contractor. Top secret clearance. Glowing references from 3 major firms. They let me pick the new office without pushback. I'd suggested the corner suite on the 14th floor, reasoning that our security consultant deserved visibility and respect. The partners agreed immediately. Too immediately, I now realized. I arrived at 7:30, 2 hours before normal business hours. The security logs would show my early entry, but I needed time to investigate without interruption. The Meridian file sat locked in my desk, but I had bigger concerns now. Our case management system maintained detailed access logs. Every login, every file viewed, every document modified. The data painted a disturbing picture once I knew what to look for. Percival's access patterns were unusual. He regularly logged in during off hours, often between midnight and 3 a.m. His activity focused heavily on client development files and billing records. For a security consultant, he spent remarkably little time on actual security matters. The Meridian Industries file showed creation timestamps that aligned perfectly with Percival's late-night sessions. But the sophistication went deeper. He'd used my credentials to authorize the retainer deposit, somehow bypassing our dual authorization protocols. I pulled up the bank records again, this time focusing on the deposit source. Meridian Industries LLC had been incorporated in Delaware 3 months ago. The registered agent was a service company that specialized in anonymous business formations. Dead by design. But the bank routing information told a different story. The deposit originated from a Michigan account belonging to Whitmore Consulting Services, Percival's personal business entity. My hands trembled slightly as I printed the bank records. This wasn't just identity theft or unauthorized access. This was systematic fraud using our firm's reputation and my credentials as cover. I needed more before confronting anyone. The partners would demand absolute proof before believing that our security consultant was running a con game from inside our own offices. The billing system revealed the full scope. Over the past 6 months, Percival had created 17 dummy client files. Each followed the same pattern. Initial consultation, retainer deposit, then minimal activity to justify the relationship. The total exceeded $400,000 in fraudulent retainers. Every transaction used my authorization codes. Every client file listed me as the primary contact. If this scheme collapsed, I'd be the obvious suspect. Percival had constructed the perfect frame job while positioning himself as an innocent consultant. The elevator chimed, announcing someone's arrival. I quickly minimized the banking screens and pulled up a legitimate case file. Footsteps approached my office, measured and familiar. "You're here early, Bryce." Percival appeared in my doorway, coffee in hand, perfectly pressed suit, that same confident smile that had impressed the partners during his interview. "Catching up on some client matters," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You know how it is." He stepped into my office uninvited, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Actually, I wanted to discuss something with you. There's been some unusual activity in our security logs. Late-night access, irregular patterns. Nothing serious, but worth monitoring." The audacity was breathtaking. He was warning me about his own criminal activity, while sitting 3 feet away from the data would destroy him. "What kind of patterns?" I asked. "Someone's been accessing client files outside normal business hours. Using administrative credentials. Could be innocent, but in my experience, these anomalies usually indicate either policy violations or something more serious." I nodded thoughtfully, playing along with his performance. "Any idea who might be responsible?" "The logs show activity under your access codes, actually. I'm sure it's just you working late, but I wanted to mention it. We should probably implement additional monitoring protocols." He was laying the groundwork for my downfall right in front of me. When the fraud inevitably surfaced, he'd point to these security concerns as of my suspicious behavior. Meanwhile, he'd appear as the diligent consultant who tried to warn the firm about potential problems. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention," I said. "Security is obviously crucial, especially with our government contracts." "Exactly. Speaking of which, I've been developing some new client relationships that might interest you. High-value government work. I'll send you the details later today." After he left, I sat in stunned silence. Percival wasn't just stealing money. He was actively recruiting me to participate in his next scheme, probably planning to use my involvement as additional cover for his activities. I spent the next 3 hours documenting everything: bank records, access logs, incorporation documents, billing discrepancies. That was overwhelming, but I needed one more piece: proof that Percival controlled the dummy LLCs. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Our accounting department maintained vendor files for all business relationships, including Percival's consulting agreement. His W-9 form listed a business address in Southfield. The same address appeared on the incorporation documents for 3 of the dummy LLCs. By noon, I had enough to bury him. 17 fraudulent clients, $400,000 in stolen retainer funds, systematic identity theft using my credentials, and a paper trail connecting every transaction back to Percival Whitmore. The question now was how to proceed. Going directly to the partners risked triggering Percival's escape plan. He'd clearly anticipated discovery and positioned me as the fall guy. But waiting too long might allow him to steal even more money or destroy. I decided to call Millicent Blackwood, our financial compliance director. She'd joined the firm 6 months ago from the State Bar's disciplinary board and had a reputation for thorough, discreet investigations. If anyone could handle this situation properly, it was her. "Millicent, I need to discuss a sensitive matter with you. Can we meet privately this afternoon?" "Of course, Bryce." "My office at 2 o'clock? Actually, let's meet off-site. This involves potential criminal activity within the firm." The silence stretched for several seconds. "I'll meet you at the coffee shop on Griswold Street. 2:15. As I prepared to leave for the meeting, my computer chimed with a new email. The sender was Percival Whitmore. The subject line read, "New client opportunity. Confidential." I opened the message with growing dread. Percival was inviting me to a meeting tomorrow morning to discuss a significant government contract opportunity with a new client called Apex Solutions LLC. He wanted to introduce me as the primary attorney for this high-value relationship. The trap was closing. Percival planned to implicate me directly in his next fraudulent scheme, probably recording our conversation as of my willing participation. By tomorrow afternoon, I'd be facing criminal charges while he disappeared with another stolen retainer. But now I had something he didn't expect: complete knowledge of his operation, and a financial compliance director who specialized in exactly this type of investigation. The game was about to change dramatically. The coffee shop on Griswold Street buzzed with afternoon energy, but Millicent Blackwood's expression remained stone cold as I laid out the bouquets. Bank statements, forged signatures, dummy LLC registrations, and the complete digital trail of Percival's operations spread across our corner table. $400,000, she said, reviewing the final tally. Across how many clients? 17 confirmed victims. The earliest theft dates back 8 months. Millicent photographed each document with methodical precision. Her background at the State Bar's disciplinary board showed in every calculated movement. "This Apex Solutions meeting tomorrow. You're not attending. He'll know something's wrong if I don't show. He already knows. This invitation is his exit strategy." She closed her notebook. "I'm activating the Financial Compliance Review Group immediately. Jeremy Kim will lead the investigation." Within 2 hours, Jeremy Kim arrived at the firm with a team of forensic accountants and digital investigators. The professional responsibility auditor moved through our offices like a surgical strike team, seizing computers, freezing accounts, and securing before Percival could react. I watched from my office as they escorted Percival from the building. His security consultant credentials meant nothing now. The man who'd spent months positioning himself as my trusted advisor walked past my door in handcuffs. his carefully constructed facade finally shattered. The partners called an emergency meeting that evening. Managing partner Millicent Thornfield's voice carried across the conference room with barely controlled fury. 17 clients, $400,000, and our legal operations director's credentials used for every transaction. Her gaze fixed on me. Explain how this happened under your supervision. I presented Jeremy Kim's preliminary findings. The forensic clearly showed Percival's systematic manipulation of our case management system, his unauthorized access to client files, and his creation of fraudulent billing entries using my stolen login credentials. The security audit he conducted last spring gave him administrative access to every system, I explained. He used that access to create shadow accounts, duplicate client profiles, and redirect retainer payments to his dummy LLCs. Partner Percival Ashworth leaned. How do we know you weren't complicit? Jeremy Kim answered before I could respond. Mr. Hamilton's digital footprint shows no knowledge of these transactions. The timestamps prove he was in court or client meetings during every fraudulent transfer. Additionally, Whitmore used sophisticated credential spoofing to mask his activities. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Our security consultant had systematically betrayed every client who trusted us with their legal matters and financial resources. What's our exposure? Asked partner Millicent Ravencroft. Criminal charges against Whitmore are certain, Jeremy Kim replied. Wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering. The FBI has already opened an investigation. For the firm, we're looking at potential malpractice claims, state bar disciplinary action, and significant reputational damage. The next morning brought a parade of consequences. Client Percival Blackthorne arrived demanding answers about his missing retainer. Client Millicent Fairfax threatened a lawsuit over her diverted settlement funds. The local legal newspaper ran a front-page story about the major Detroit law firm theft scandal. But Jeremy Kim's investigation had provided us with something crucial: a complete roadmap for client restitution. The frozen accounts contained most of the stolen funds, and the firm's malpractice insurance would cover the remainder. I spent the following weeks personally contacting every affected client. These conversations required delicate balance, acknowledging our security failure while demonstrating our commitment to making them whole. Mr. Blackthorne, I understand your anger. Percival Whitmore violated every principle of legal ethics and professional responsibility, but we've recovered your full retainer amount and will be implementing new security protocols to prevent any future breaches. Some clients accepted our explanations and remained with the firm. Others, understandably, took their business elsewhere. The damage to our reputation would take years to repair. The State Bar's disciplinary hearing occurred 6 weeks later. I testified about Percival's systematic deception, his abuse of administrative access, and the firm's immediate response once we discovered the theft. Mr. Hamilton, the hearing officer asked, what safeguards will prevent similar incidents? We've implemented multi-factor authentication, segregated administrative access, and quarterly forensic audits. No single individual will ever again have unrestricted access to client accounts. The bar's final ruling praised our cooperation with the investigation and our comprehensive client restitution efforts. The firm received a public censure but avoided suspension of our license to practice. Percival Whitmore's criminal trial began 3 months later. The Jeremy Kim's team had assembled proved overwhelming. Wire fraud across state lines, systematic identity theft, and money laundering charges carried potential sentences of 20 years in federal prison. I testified as the primary victim of his credential theft. Facing him across the courtroom felt surreal. This man who'd shared coffee with me, discussed security protocols, and gradually earned my complete trust. Mr. Hamilton, the prosecutor asked, how did the defendant gain access to your login credentials? He installed keylogging software during his security audit. Every password, every client file access, every system entry was recorded and replicated. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. During sentencing, several clients provided victim impact statements. Millicent Fairfax described the stress of believing her settlement funds had vanished. Percival Blackthorne explained how the theft had delayed his business expansion plans. The judge sentenced Percival Whitmore to 12 years in federal prison and ordered full restitution to all victims. Justice had been served, but the scars on our firm's reputation would remain visible for years. As the courtroom emptied, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The investigation, client meetings, bar hearings, and criminal trial had consumed 6 months of my life. But we'd protected our clients, preserved the firm's license, and ensured that Percival Whitmore would never again have the opportunity to betray professional trust. The betrayal had cost us clients, money, and reputation, but it had also revealed the strength of our commitment to ethical practice and client protection. 18 months later, I stood in a lecture hall at Wayne State University Law School, addressing 43 second-year students about legal ethics and professional responsibility. Trust, I told them, is the foundation of our profession. When that trust breaks, the damage extends far beyond individual careers. The students listened intently as I described the warning signs of internal fraud without naming specific cases or individuals. Their faces reflected the same naive confidence I'd once possessed. The belief that colleagues were inherently trustworthy simply because they'd passed the bar exam. After Percival Whitmore's conviction, I'd left the firm to establish my own practice specializing in legal compliance and risk management. The irony wasn't lost on me. The betrayal that nearly destroyed my career had created a new one. My client base consisted primarily of mid-sized law firms seeking to strengthen their internal controls. I designed security protocols, conducted vulnerability assessments, and trained staff to recognize potential threats. The work felt meaningful in ways that traditional litigation never had. The firm had recovered more successfully than anyone anticipated. New clients replaced those we'd lost, and our enhanced security measures became a selling point rather than a liability. Millicent Blackwood had been promoted to managing partner, and she'd implemented every recommendation from Jeremy Kim's compliance review. I maintained contact with several former colleagues, but the relationships had changed. Shared trauma creates bonds, but it also serves as a constant reminder of vulnerability. Every conversation carried the unspoken acknowledgement of what we'd survived together. My new office occupied the 15th floor of a downtown Detroit building with views of the Detroit River. The space was smaller than my previous corner office, but it belonged entirely to me. No shared systems, no network vulnerabilities, no security consultants with administrative access. I serve as an adjunct in a law and leadership program at the University of Detroit Mercy, teaching courses on professional responsibility and risk management. The students often ask about real-world applications of ethical rules, and I share sanitized versions of lessons learned through painful experience. The nightmares had finally stopped. For months after the trial, I'd awakened with racing thoughts about compromised passwords and stolen client funds. Sleep had become elusive, interrupted by imagined alerts and phantom security breaches. Recovery required rebuilding trust in systems, colleagues, and my own judgment. Therapy helped, but time proved the most effective healer. Each successful day of independent practice reinforced my confidence and competence. Percival Whitmore remained in federal prison, serving his 12-year sentence. I'd received notification that he'd filed an appeal, but legal experts considered his chances minimal, given the overwhelming and his guilty plea. Sometimes I wondered if I'd missed earlier warning signs, subtle behavioral changes or inconsistencies that might have prevented the theft. But dwelling on hypotheticals served no productive purpose. The betrayal had happened, we'd responded appropriately, and justice had prevailed. The legal profession's reputation for self-regulation had been tested and validated. The bar's investigation was thorough, the criminal prosecution successful, and client restitution complete. The system had worked as designed, even when individual actors failed their obligations. As I prepared to leave the lecture hall, a student approached with questions about career choices and ethical challenges. Her enthusiasm reminded me of my own early years in practice, the excitement of joining a noble profession dedicated to justice and client service. "How do you maintain trust after experiencing betrayal?" she asked. "Carefully," I replied, "but you maintain it nonetheless. Without trust, we have no profession." The evening sun cast long shadows across the campus as I walked to my car. Detroit's skyline stretched before me, familiar yet transformed by perspective and experience. The city had weathered its own betrayals and emerged stronger, more resilient. My phone buzzed with a text from a potential client, another law firm seeking security consultation. The work continued, each engagement an opportunity to prevent others from experiencing what we'd endured. The drive home took me past the building where my former firm still operated. I felt no bitterness, only gratitude for lessons learned and relationships forged under pressure. The betrayal had ended one of my career and begun another. At home, I poured a glass of wine and reviewed notes for tomorrow's compliance presentation. The material covered network security, access controls, and trust verification protocols, technical solutions to human problems. Outside my window, the Detroit River flowed steadily toward Lake Erie, carrying away the day's concerns and tomorrow's uncertainties. The water moved with purpose and patience, qualities I'd learned to value in both life and practice. The phone rang once more, a colleague seeking advice about suspicious billing patterns at her firm. I listened carefully, asked detailed questions, and provided guidance based on hard-won experience. After the call ended, I sat in comfortable silence, reflecting on the journey from victim to advisor, from betrayed to protector. The transformation hadn't been easy, but it felt complete and authentic. The clock showed 9:47 p.m. as I closed my laptop and prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new clients, and new opportunities to strengthen the profession's ethical foundations. I thought briefly of Percival Whitmore in his federal cell, serving time for choices that had destroyed his career and damaged countless others. His betrayal had been thorough and calculating, but its consequences had been equally complete. The bedroom was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the gentle rhythm of my breathing. Sleep came easily now, untroubled by security concerns or trust issues. It was finally over, and the silence felt earned.